Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. When through the woods and forest glades I wander and hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees, when I look down from lofty mountain grandeur and see the brook and feel the gentle breeze, then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and then proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art.
Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters, boys and girls. What a beautiful beginning to a session on meditation. A prayer, a sincere and ardent prayer of a devotee to the divine, giving oneself completely to the divine and placing total reliance on the divine as the savior. Call him Krishna or Christ, makes no difference, but it is the divine in all these forms, in all these names, who has inspired the devotee to pray, to place full trust in the protection of the divine as the savior, and seeing the divine everywhere, be it the clouds or the thunder or the stars. And as a coincidence, in New Delhi today, we have a beautiful cloudy sky with the clouds and the sun playing hide and seek. So today we turn in this series on techniques of yoga to meditation. Probably when it comes to popular demand, popular expectation, in a course on yoga, just next to asanas and pranayamas, people want something to learn about meditation. Meditation is an overrated technique, but that doesn't mean that it has no value, and we shall turn to it in considerable detail today and leave it to you to take off it in your practice as much as you please. My humble salutations to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo. The course Yes.01 and all the subsequent courses and other activities that we'll have are a part of the celebrations of the 150th birth anniversary of Aurobindo and the 75th anniversary of India's independence. So today's session is on the what, why and how, that is the process and the rationale and the technique of meditation. The first question that arises is why meditate? Let's first look at some of the popular reasons for meditation, which may not be necessarily the best reasons for meditation. One is everybody does it. It is the in thing. It is fashionable. So we feel that we also become a part of the crowd if we start meditating. It may also be used as a substitute for medication. Medicines have side effects, and therefore, particularly for stress, instead of using a tranquilizer, let me use meditation. Students may want to use it because they feel that meditation will help improve their ability to concentrate, and therefore they'll be able to concentrate better on their studies, and thereby their academic performance would improve. And finally, some people also look upon meditation as a shortcut to a spiritual experience or enlightenment, and here is a whole family engaged in that process trying to meditate, and the child is getting a little tired of it and wants to get up probably to go out to play. So are we there yet? Huh? Now, what is the significance of meditation in yoga? The basic point is that it is one of the ways in which we can establish contact with the divine. A contact at the level of the mind becoming more aware of that higher force which we are trying to unite with in the path of yoga. And for that, it is important that the normal chaotic surface activity of the mind is at least reduced, if not totally silenced. And one can easily understand it through an analogy. When we are swimming, if the water in the swimming pool is quiet, we can look at the bottom of the pool and see all those lines clearly marked there. But it's difficult to see that through turbulent water. So in the same way, so long as the normal activity of the mind, which is generally chaotic, purposeless, and not very streamlined, it's a totally haphazard activity, when we, through that, it's difficult to go deeper. So if the surface is very active, it's difficult to go deeper. So it's only when we go deeper into the deepest and the highest reaches of the mind that we can establish the contact with the divine, and that is one of the basic principles of meditation. Sri Aurobindo calls it a vigilant blank. That is, we are trying to have a mind which is blank, but then that can create a misunderstanding. That is a mind which is incapable of doing anything or has just gone blank. But this is a vigilant blank. It is alert to the voice of the divine, to feeling the presence of the divine. Now here is a group of serious academic-minded young people, very well versed with technology, who have grown up with the computers, trying to meditate. And the instructor is telling them that in your mind's browser, clear your cache, then delete your history, and now navigate to a blank web page. Sri Aurobindo has given 4 essentials of meditation. 2 of them are external conditions and 2 internal conditions. The external conditions are solitude and seclusion. It may look paradoxical that Sri Aurobindo, who has emphasized life affirmation, is here talking of solitude and seclusion. Solitude and seclusion, to a limited extent, yes, does help, and one can reserve a certain part of the day when one goes into that for that inner silence which is necessary for the meditative process. And meditation, therefore, does have a value. It's not that it doesn't have a value in integral yoga, but like other techniques, it is something which is not obligatory, it's not compulsory. But all the same, if one does want to meditate, a certain degree of solitude and seclusion, for which one can reserve a certain part of the day when one decides to meditate, would help. Then, since the body and the mind are connected, to achieve silence of the mind, it is important to achieve immobility of the body. So, that is stillness of the body. The internal conditions are concentration of the will. Now, here, concentration of the will doesn't necessarily mean a firm determination that I want to meditate, but here the concentration of the will probably would mean that we have centered our capacity for doing something on a certain process, which means we are not letting our intention, here will is more like an intention, we are not we are not frittering away our capacity for intending to do one thing or the other in all sorts of directions. We have concentrated our intention on one thing. The attention is very focused, the will is focused on establishing a contact with the divine while we are meditating. And the fact that this concentration is not something which should agitate us or should itself become a part of the sort of stress that we have, or increase the stress, one type of stress getting replaced by another type of stress, that I want to meditate. It's not that type of concentration. It's a concentration which is associated with calmness and purity, purity of feelings and thoughts. That is, trying to get rid of our negativities and filling our hearts with love. So these are the external and the internal conditions. To some extent, they correspond with some of the essentials that Herbert Benson arrived at. Herbert Benson went on to establish at the Harvard Medical School the Body Mind Institute. And his beginning was when Maharshi Mahesh Yogi visited him perhaps in the 1970s with a proposal that Herbert Benson study the process of transcendental meditation, which Maharshi Mahesh Yogi established, and see its effects through his research. Herbert Benson said that I am ready to do it provided you let me publish the results even if they are negative. So Maharshi agreed, and Herbert Benson was pleasantly surprised to find that he did find significant effects on things like blood pressure, heart rate, and the blood lactate levels, and quite a few other things. And finally he sort of grouped all those findings, all those things which resulted from meditation, in what he called the relaxation response. That is, you're totally relaxed and that's what happens. And he found that this relaxation response is not only far more efficient, but also very different from the type of relaxation which one gets during sleep. There's a big qualitative difference between the two. Then he went on to study, Herbert Benson did a theoretical study of a large number of meditative techniques available around the world. And he came to the conclusion that they all have basically 4 essentials. First is a quiet environment, and that is what Sri Aurobindo has also talked about, solitude and seclusion. Then a comfortable position, that is stillness of the body in a way. And then he said that they all have a mental device, that is a certain device for silencing the surface activity of the mind. One can call it the achieving concentration of the will. And then a passive attitude, which means you just let things happen rather than try and achieve something, try and get a certain type of experience, or struggle with the thoughts. Just go with the flow. So these are the 4 basic essentials of the meditative techniques, which he grouped together and said that all meditative techniques around the world basically have these 4 essential features. The type of mental devices used can be categorized into 2: concentration and mindfulness, not necessarily mutually exclusive, but some techniques emphasize concentration, others emphasize mindfulness. The technique that we shall be discussing today is based on Patanjali's Raja Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. And the reason for selecting it is that not only it is one of the most ancient, perhaps the most ancient documented technique, for which we get a cue from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, but also it is a very comprehensive scheme. It includes just about every strategy that anybody has ever come up with for silencing the surface activity of the mind. So when we think of the 8 limbs of yoga, which Patanjali has given in the Yoga Sutras, as we have seen in another previous session, the first two are yama and niyama, which means that before we go to the specialized technique of meditation, the beginning should be made by becoming a better person. Because essentially yamas and niyamas are a code of conduct, a code for moral purification, which makes the person a better person, and anybody would in fact think of many of those things if he just asked, if you want to be a better person, what is it that you would like to do? I'll stop telling lies, I'll not be violent, I'll not be greedy, I'll not accumulate more possessions. Now, these are some of the things that the person would come up with anyway. So, yamas and niyamas, give them in a very concrete manner, 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, and if a person makes a beginning with that, the person will start becoming a better person. And then he is equipped to go to the techniques. Techniques such as asana. Asanas, are not only those which we have been doing in the last few days for getting physical exercise, although again there is an overlap. Those postures for physical exercise can also acquire a meditative character, as we have seen, because when we achieve that prayatna shaithilya, and that becomes a meditative poise. So one can't really clearly separate, but then when we talk specifically of the technique of meditation, that also starts with an asana. And like all asanas, this asana for meditation should also be have these 2 basic characteristics, that is sthir sukha asanam. It should be steady and comfortable. Generally, the posture recommended is the sitting posture, because in that posture we can be both steady and comfortable. To be steady and comfortable, one of the basic requirements is that the posture should be erect. We should be sitting erect with the back and the neck erect. They should be erect but not tense. It is possible to be erect and yet relaxed. And if one is not totally relaxed, then after sitting erect, one can make a voluntary effort to relax of the type that one makes during Shavasana. So the person should be relaxed. The person should not feel any part of the body which attracts attention because of not only discomfort, but because you have to support it. For example, the person should not feel the weight of the arms or the hands, and that is why during meditation the usual advice is that you should sit in one of the 3 postures. Either you should sit in Sukhasana or Padmasana with your hands either in chin mudra like this, that is the thumb and the index finger in contact, or sit with your hands in your lap with one hand cupping the other, or with your hands in the lap with the fingers interlocked. In a photograph, a person sitting in chin mudra looks much better. But personally, I find that sitting with the hands in your lap with one hand cupping the other feels more comfortable. But then you can decide for yourself what feels more comfortable to you. Another posture which is not like Padmasana or Sukhasana. Padmasana is a bit like Sukhasana, that is the cross-legged pose, but it's a little more difficult and everybody may not be able to do it. But the ordinary cross-legged pose, Sukhasana, just about everybody can do. And if you find it difficult to do it otherwise, then if you use a cushion on which you sit, the buttocks are resting on the cushion, but the legs are further down on the mat. If you sit like that, then you'll find that it will be easier to do it even if you are otherwise not able to sit in Padmasana or Sukhasana. Padmasana is the lotus pose and Sukhasana is the ordinary cross-legged pose. Besides these two, there is another posture, Vajrasana, or the thunderbolt posture, or the namaz pose, kneeling. That pose is also considered suitable for meditation. if you find that you can sit in that posture for a long period of time continuously. Many can't. So one of the three postures in which you are most comfortable is considered a standard meditative posture: Padmasana, lotus pose; Sukhasana, ordinary cross-legged pose; and Vajrasana, the thunderbolt posture. So these are the three basic sort of classical poses for meditation. But they're not sacrosanct. The essential feature is being stable and comfortable, not to sit in a particular position. And if a person finds it difficult to sit in any of these three, maybe if the person has, say, osteoarthritis of the knees, then the person can sit in a chair. But again, the back should be erect and straight and relaxed. So if the person sits in a chair with a proper good back support, ergonomically designed so that you don't feel uncomfortable, or yesterday we saw that when you slouch forwards, actually that is a more strenuous posture for the back than sitting erect. So sit erect, whether on a chair or on the mat, and relax. So sitting straight and relaxed, that is what is important. It doesn't matter whether it's on the floor or on a chair. A few other related points. What time should one meditate, what place should one meditate at, and so on. As far as possible, at the same place at the same time. Why at the same place? Because if you meditate at the same place every day, then you get accustomed to it. You feel more peaceful there because you try to arrange the place in such a way that it is more conducive to peace. You may keep some neutral objects like flowers or some incense sticks, or you may keep some image or an idol of a guru or an incarnation of the divine, or anyone who symbolizes the divine to you, in keeping with your faith and belief. So you can make the place more conducive to peace by having such objects at the place where you regularly meditate. Also, when you retire to that place, everybody in the family knows that you are meditating and you don't have to be disturbed. So it's easier, preferable to meditate at the same place every day. But again, there is no strict rule. If you are traveling, naturally you'll have to meditate somewhere else. How about the time? What time? The two most preferred times are early in the morning, a little before sunrise, Prabhat, and in the evening, a little after sunset, that is Sandhya. But again, they are not sacrosanct. You can fit into your routine any time that suits you the best. And one of the, or two of the other timings which might suit many people better are as soon as you get up in the morning before you get out of bed, or in the evening at bedtime. One may also ask, that reminds me, that why do we have to meditate only sitting down? Why not lying down? Because we are most stable and comfortable lying down. The answer can be both in yes and no. No, it is not recommended that you meditate lying down, because then you are likely to fall asleep. And the intention is to meditate, not to fall asleep. But the answer can also be yes. If bedtime is the time that you have decided upon, that is the only time you have when you can meditate lying down. And if while meditating you fall asleep, that would be one of the best ways to fall asleep. In any case, you do want to sleep. But then while lying down, if you start meditating and fall asleep while meditating, that would be wonderful. So again, there is nothing sacrosanct. You can meditate lying down as well. Then what about the duration? As a rule of the thumb, about 20 minutes. But again, that is not sacrosanct. If you find 20 minutes is too long for you, you can meditate shorter. If you have less time available, you can meditate for a shorter period. On the other hand, if you start enjoying it and you have the time available, you can meditate longer than 20 minutes. But one thing which is important is not to come out of it abruptly. It's not that if you decided to meditate for 20 minutes, you set an alarm clock. As soon as the alarm clock goes up, now my time is over. Now that's not the way to come out of meditation. So these are some of the things which are related to the asana. Then how about the eyes? Generally, it's recommended that one keeps the eyes closed. And the idea is that we are trying to minimize any distraction uh, because if we have to silence the surface activity of the mind, one should not be distracted by what one is seeing. And that is very simple to avoid. Any visual stimulus is very simple to avoid. Just close the eyes gently, as we do in Shavasana, not tightly shut. So close the eyes. But there are some systems of meditation in which the eyes are kept open. And in some of those systems, either you are gazing at some point on the floor or on the mat about a meter away from you, about 3 feet away from you. That is where you are looking. Now, if you're constantly looking there, it becomes a monotonous stimulus. And a monotonous stimulus again does not distract. In some systems, you are looking at a spot of light on the wall. Again, it's a monotonous stimulus. If you are looking at something monotonous, again, that does not distract and does not lead to any complex mental activity. So that is the basic principle. But then most people find it much easier to just close the eyes because that is very simple and that avoids visual stimuli. Now, having settled comfortably in a stable position with the eyes closed on a seat that is neither too hard nor too soft, a firm seat, one can go to the next limb, and that is pranayama. Pranayama in relation to meditation translates into slow breathing, slow but not deep. Because during meditation, our oxygen requirement falls considerably, and therefore, in fact, we need to breathe even less deeply than we would normally do in the resting position. So, not only that, as the meditation proceeds, you'll find during meditation itself, gradually the breath will actually keep getting less and less deep, more and more subtle. And therefore, the important thing is just slow breathing. How slow? About 5 times a minute, which means about 1/3 to 1/4 the normal rate at which we breathe. Normally, we breathe at 15 to 20 times a minute. Bring it down to about 5 times a minute. Now, it should not only be slow, but as we have seen in the many other pranayamas, it should also be abdominal. That is, when we breathe in, the abdomen should go out. While breathing out, the abdomen should go in. And more time should be spent on breathing out than on breathing in. Now, slowing down of the breath and breathing in this fashion, abdominal breathing, itself makes us feel relaxed. It makes us feel relaxed because the mind-body relationship works both ways. When we breathe slowly, when we are relaxed, we breathe slowly. When we breathe slowly, we start feeling relaxed. So it's because of that that we start feeling relaxed. Why? By just slow breathing. Breathing should not only be slow, spending more time on breathing out than on breathing in brings down also the heart rate. Again, where we are angry and agitated, the heart rate goes up. When we are at peace, the heart rate goes down. So if we can bring down the heart rate by spending more time on breathing out than on breathing in, we start feeling relaxed. Further, breathing should not only have these characteristics, breathing should also be conscious, which means pay attention to the breath. And what one can do is be conscious of the process of breathing. If you're trying to regulate all these things, that the duration of breathing out, during breathing in, which part of the body is moving, abdomen going out while breathing in, and so on, you are concentrating. But that you can increase the concentration by paying attention to the flow of air. Feel the cool air going in and warm air leaving the respiratory tract as you are breathing out. So feel the difference in the temperature of the air and feel the airflow. So concentrate on the breath. So conscious breathing, slow breathing, breathing in which abdomen goes out every time you breathe in, and spending more time on breathing out than on breathing in. Now all this will itself make you feel very relaxed, and the mind will be considerably silent. You will find that the usual chaotic traffic of the thoughts has stopped, and some techniques of meditation therefore just stop at this. Their main focus is on breathing. But then Patanjali knew that probably this may not last long enough, And to maintain that type of inner silence, something more is necessary, and therefore he has put a few more limbs there. And the next limb is pratyahar. Pratyahar is about reducing the inputs into the mind. The inputs can be from outside as well as from inside. So the mind withdraws from both. Pratyahara basically means withdrawal. So you withdraw from sensory stimuli outside and also the stimuli from within. From within, all types of thoughts, pay no attention to them, they'll start fading away. Stimuli from outside, we have tried to reduce considerably already, because you are sitting on a seat which is neither too soft nor too hard, it's just firm, so no stimulus coming from the seat. One is sitting erect, totally relaxed, so not much stimuli coming from anywhere in the body. The eyes are closed, so no visual stimulus. Further, one also should try to meditate at a place which is neither too cold nor too hot, so no stimulus so far as temperature goes. And one should also try and sit in a room that is neither too dark nor too brightly lit. It can be dark, but certainly not brightly lit, either dimly lit or dark, but by and large generally we sit in a room which is dimly lit, especially in collective meditation. So you are trying to avoid all types of stimuli. However, there is one stimulus on which one cannot have total control. We try and sit in a corner or a room which is relatively silent, but what we hear, that is the stimulus of sounds, cannot be totally avoided. Not only it cannot be totally avoided, you find that many of the sounds that you did not notice earlier, you'll start noticing now. For example, the sound from the fan or the air conditioner, or somebody in the house moving the furniture, or the telephone bell ringing, or something like so, or even a little the drops of water falling in a bucket somewhere in the house. An endless variety of sounds that you will start hearing during this stage of meditation. And you'll feel that why does all this have to happen when I'm trying to meditate? Instead of getting agitated, what one has to realize is that all this is happening because you are very successful at meditating. So you can congratulate yourself. It is happening because now you are able to pay attention, or rather attention is getting drawn to these stimuli exactly because you are otherwise totally relaxed. Your mind is relatively silent, and that's why all this is happening. So this is an unmasking effect. The sounds which were masked earlier by all types of thoughts in your mind, because of which you are not paying any attention to these sounds, have now become apparent. They have now become manifest to you because of this unmasking effect. But all the same, what should we do about them? What one should do about them is to once again withdraw yourself from them. Pay no attention to them, and these sounds will also start fading away. So don't struggle with them, just stop paying attention to them as if they don't exist. So withdraw yourself from all types of sensory stimuli from outside, as well as all types of stimuli in terms of various thoughts coming from within. So that total withdrawal. Now if that has been achieved, the mind has nothing in it, and one has reached what Sri Aurobindo calls a vigilant blank. But then nature abhors vacuum. One can't stay blank for very long. And that is why what Patanjali has done is to have yet another limb, and that is dharana. Dharana is concentration. Now you'd say that we are already concentrating on the breath, but apparently that is not enough. One should have more integral concentration. Concentrating on the breath is essentially concentrating on a bodily function. One should also have concentration of the emotional part of the being and the intellect. That would be more integral. Now, how do we achieve emotional concentration? By concentrating on something with which we have an emotional involvement, an entity to which we have a sense of devotion, and which signifies the sacred to us. And how do we involve the intellect? By engaging ourselves in some mental activity which is related to the object of devotion. So that is how concentration becomes more integral. Now, what we are trying to get at is that apart from concentrating on the breath, one should also concentrate on something that signifies the sacred to us. But let's keep that aside for a few minutes and see that how concentration on something in addition to the breath itself can help. It helps because the mind cannot stay blank for a long time. At the same time, we don't want to go back to the same type of chaotic traffic that we had earlier. So what we want to do is, instead of leaving the mind totally empty or blank, we are trying to engage the mind in something that is mechanical, repetitive, non-analytic, and simple. So an activity that is not complex because it is mechanical and repetitive, non-analytic. So that is the type of activity in which we are trying to engage the mind. So a mind which is engaged in such an activity will not be distracted because the activity is very simple, mechanical and repetitive. It's not complex thinking that we are going back to. And therefore it will not act as a distraction, and yet it will fill the mind with at least something. So that it will not be a total vacuum. And this can be easily understood through an analogy. In the state of Kerala in India, there is a festival called Puram. In that festival, there is a procession of elephants, and the elephants march through various streets and bazaars and markets, and they have this dirty habit of when they are passing near a shop which has coconuts, they pick up a coconut and swallow it. Now, to prevent the elephant from playing any such mischief, what they do is right at the onset of the procession, they give the elephant a stick to hold in its trunk. Now the elephant feels that I have been given a job to do. If I try to pick up a coconut, then the stick will drop. And therefore then it does not place any such mischief. It goes through the entire procession without touching a coconut. Now, to some extent, what we concentrate on during dharana serves the same function as the coconut does for the elephant. Our mind has been engaged with something. We feel I have a job to do. I'm concentrating on something. I'm chanting something, and therefore this will be disturbed if I think of anything else. So it gives the mind a job to do, a job which doesn't distract, a job which is very simple, and yet it is effective in preventing getting distracted by all types of stray thoughts. So that is one function which dharana or concentration serves. But having said that, concentrating on something which signifies the sacred to us, something towards which we have a sense of devotion, is more effective than concentrating on something totally neutral. Because there are studies, research studies, which have shown that concentrating on a neutral sound, which doesn't have any emotional significance for us, concentrating on a neutral sound is less effective in achieving mental peace than in concentrating on something which signifies the sacred to us, towards which we have a sense of devotion, because with that particular entity we have an emotional involvement. So concentration becomes more integral. And further, what happens is that when you are concentrating on that entity which signifies the sacred to us, we get the assurance that to our own feeble efforts has been added a higher power which is far more effective. And further, that we have the guidance and protection of that entity always available to us. That entity loves us, and that love, comfort and security that we feel in the by having a contact with that entity helps. And if a person starts meditating and during meditation chants the name of the Guru or the God or the Goddess or the incarnation in which he has faith, when he starts doing that, then by repeating that for several minutes during meditation, and then every day while the person meditates, month after month, year after year, what happens is that the person establishes a personal bond with that entity, with that Guru, with that God or Goddess. And the result is that as soon as he starts chanting their name, the person starts feeling peace. And therefore it's also important that to be able to establish that bond, one does not change that entity repeatedly. Stick to the same. They are all the same because the same divine acting through all of them. And therefore, unless there's a strong reason, after you started chanting a particular name, don't change it too often. Try to stick to the same because that will help in establishing that bond so that the moment you start chanting, you'll start feeling the peace. So, what can one concentrate on? One can concentrate on the name of a guru or a god or a goddess. One can concentrate also on a part of the body. One can concentrate on an image. The image need not be seen with your eyes open. One can form that image within the mind, even with the eyes closed. These are some of the popular things on which one concentrates. But usually the concentration, most commonly the concentration is on a sound, which may be the name of a god or a goddess, or it may be a mantra. These are the usual concentrations. Now you'll say that concentrating on this sound and concentrating on the breath might create a clash. But it does not create a clash because this sound can be synchronized with breathing. In fact, that makes it very effective, more effective. So it's slow breathing and slow chanting. If it is a short sound, then it should be synchronized with breathing out. If it is a longish sound or mantra, then break it into two parts. Chant the first part while breathing in and the second part while breathing out. So that's how the two get synchronized and behave as one unit. How about a part of the body? One can in fact couple a part of the body with breathing as well as the sound. Then what would happen is that every time the person breathes, not only you are chanting something that has been synchronized with it, you start feeling that part of the body pulsating, the part of the body on which you are concentrating. Now, which part of the body? The part of the body on which you concentrate I'm sorry I stopped because the ashram is on the flight path and there was a very noisy aeroplane going outside. So I thought that let me not try to compete with that. Some of these aeroplanes are very noisy. It almost seems that they are practicing Brahmari. And we like to believe that they learnt it while passing over the ashram. So anyway, so coming back to dharana, concentration. So when we are concentrating, say, on three things, that is the breath, the sound, and a part of the body, it almost starts feeling as if the part of the body on which you are concentrating starts pulsating while we are breathing. So with each breath, inspiration or expiration, there's a pulse that one feels there, and simultaneously one is chanting the name, whatever you have, or mantra that you have decided upon. So that is how all these things can behave as one unit. Now, which part of the body, if one decides to concentrate on a part of the body, which part of the body? The usual recommendations are either the area between the two eyebrows in the head or the forehead, or on the area in front of the heart. This is chest. These are the two. And perhaps it is better that if a person is more knowledge oriented, intellect oriented, then concentrate on the area between the eyebrows. If you are more emotional by nature, more of a devotee than a knowledge oriented person, then concentrate on the heart. So these are some of the things, but then the important thing is not so much whether you couple two things or three things. The important thing is to engage in some mechanical, repetitive, non-analytic activity, preferably while occupying your mind with something that signifies the sacred to you, that symbolizes the divine to you. So if one does that and does it in such a way that breathing and that concentration form one single unit, then you will find that the vigilant blank that had been established during pratyahara will continue even during this stage. Now, how about the next limb, dhyana? Dhyana means contemplation. And what do we contemplate on? We contemplate on something related to the theme of concentration. For example, if you are concentrating on the name of a guru, then you may start seeing the image of that guru during dhyana. You may start having a dialogue with the guru during that dhyana. If you read some teachings of the guru recently, you may start thinking of those teachings. You may start thinking of whether you have been able to apply those teachings in your life properly. Now, these are all things which are related to the theme of concentration. So, you'll see that dhyana has an element of mindfulness. So, that is why Patanjali's scheme becomes very comprehensive. Dharana is concentration, dhyana is mindfulness. So, you have elements of both concentration and mindfulness built into it. Normally we talk of two types of meditative practices, concentration type and meditation type. Here both have been included. You can use both of them together or pay more emphasis to one or the other compared to your inclination and temperament. So that's why I said this is one of the most comprehensive schemes of meditation that has ever been devised. It includes just about every strategy that anybody has ever been able to think of for silencing the surface activity of the mind. It includes all the environmental thing, external conditions, comfort, this and that, and also everything required for creating those internal conditions which will keep you peaceful. Both concentration and mindfulness, both types of mental devices have been built into it. So that type of thoughts are quite permissible, because that is the basic principle of mindfulness, that we should try to retain only those thoughts which are worth retaining. And therefore, any thoughts which are related to the theme of concentration would naturally be worth retaining, and that is permissible. And also, it is not that once you have gone into dhyana, you can't go back to dharana. In fact, you can keep going back and forth. When you have no such thoughts coming, you can go back to dharana, go back to that mechanical repetition of the mantra or the name or the japa as it is called. Repeating a name is also called japa. You can go back to that. Of course, another related thing, if you are chanting a name or a mantra, should it be loud or silent? Silent is better, at least for two reasons. Firstly, the less you externalize on the whole, the better the meditation will go. Secondly, if you are in a group, and collective meditation has its value because it increases the sort of right type of vibrations, their intensity becomes stronger because the frequency of the vibrations depends upon what you are engaged in. So the type of frequency that is generated during meditation has a high quality. So those high quality vibrations, those positive vibrations become cumulative in a collective meditation. At the same time, if one is doing collective meditation, then one should not sit too close, because otherwise the subtle bodies start clashing, because the gross body defines only the visible boundary, around it also a subtle envelope. So that those subtle envelopes start clashing, so therefore one should sit at a little distance, but at the same time collective meditation does help. And these, in any case, everybody is talking of physical distancing. Corona has imposed that on all of us. So anyway, so sit at a distance. So what I was talking about, loud chanting or silent chanting. Silent chanting would be naturally better in a group, because if everybody is concentrating on a different guru or a different god and goddess, then it will be only chaos if they start chanting loudly. So silent chanting, and you can keep going back and forth between dharana and dhyana. So that's how you have both these elements of concentration and mindfulness built into these. How about the last limb, samadhi? Samadhi is not a part of the process of meditation. It is the product of meditation. And one doesn't have to be in a hurry to get to samadhi. When it has to come, it will come. So the technique stops at dhyana, and samadhi, which is a super conscious stage, that is becoming conscious of something of which we are not normally aware at the mental level, getting some glimpses of something which is beyond the ordinary. That is what samadhi is about, a super conscious state, and one doesn't have to be in a hurry about it. Not being in a hurry about it, again there's a little story. There was once a person who took instructions from his guru about how to go around his sadhana, and for 20 years he tried to do everything, including meditation and everything else that he was told to do. And then he asked his guru, have I reached the final stage, the stage of samadhi or siddhi or perfection, whatever you may like to call it, have I reached that final goal? The guru told him, no, you still haven't, because you have not been doing things right. So he was very disappointed. He said, for such a long time, 20 years, I have practiced so much. I have kept myself away from all the pleasures which my friends were enjoying. All this sacrifice has been of no use. So let me also go back to what uh, my friends have been enjoying. So he changed his food and dress and lifestyle in the hope that now he can experience some of those sensory pleasures that he had denied himself all these 20 years. But then what he found was that he was not enjoying them. He couldn't see why other people enjoy them so much. So he said, well, samadhi or no samadhi, I'll go back to what I really enjoy doing. He had started enjoying what he had been doing for 20 years. So he went back to the same austere lifestyle and started doing what he had been doing for 20 years. Then he met his guru, or maybe the guru came to him, the gurus do that also, and told him, now you have reached the final stage. So he said, how come in such a few days, such a short period, I had not achieved it in 20 years and now I have reached there? He said, yes, you have reached there because now you do not have a desire to reach there. So even that desire is gone. So that is what samadhi is about. Okay. Or the final goal in yoga is about. Now just to sort of break the monotony, here is a group seriously trying to meditate, and the instructor is giving them, creating for them a beautiful sort of a image on which they could concentrate, or rather filling their mind with something very pleasant so that it will silence the surface activity of the mind. Visualizing snow-clad mountains or a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset or the beach or the ocean, as you can see in some of these pictures, that generates a sort of a spiritual experience. That also makes us, feel closer to the divine, because this beauty and unspoilt sort of a landscape puts us in touch with the divine. All this type of beauty in which man has minimum interference has an imprint of the divine, and that's how it generates a spiritual experience. So this teacher is also trying to create this type. We can't be at such a place all the time, but we can imagine or visualize such a place all the time, even with the eyes closed. So that is what this teacher is trying to do, and that is why sometimes that is something we also do in Shavasana, create that imagery. So that's what this teacher is doing, and telling them, imagine a quiet state, an oasis of calm, where you leave behind all of the clutter and noise and distractions and experience a true peace. So one of the meditators imagining this beautiful palm tree and the ocean, as you would see probably in Kerala. Another is looking at a beautiful boat floating there. But what is the third person thinking? So, you can't ensure what the person will see during meditation. What his mind is occupied with is the computer screen, which is telling, are you sure you want to permanently delete your Facebook account? Choice is continue or cancel. That's what his mind is full of. So, since that type of things, whether or not to delete the Facebook account, can happen to all of us, one of the important things to learn during meditation is how to handle the thoughts which will come in spite of all the details of how to meditate that we have talked about. If you still get thoughts during your meditation, don't think that's just your problem. It's my problem too. It's a universal problem. It happens to everybody. Highly experienced meditators also confess that they can hardly keep their mind totally free of clutter, totally free of stray unwanted thoughts, even for 5 minutes at a stretch. So when a person says that I have been meditating for 20 minutes, what it means is that you have that type of inner silence for a few seconds, maybe half a minute, maybe 1 minute, then you start getting those stray thoughts, you handle them in some way, and then you again return to meditation, maybe silent for another half a minute, then again some thoughts, then again you go back. So, you are just going back and forth between that inner silence and unwanted thoughts. So getting these thoughts is a universal problem, and therefore it's good to know something about how to handle them. The first thing naturally is, don't be too critical of yourself. Don't think that only you don't know how to meditate, that way nobody knows how to meditate. It happens to everybody. So do not indulge in self-flagellation. But then what to do? First thing is, ignore the thoughts. Do not pay any attention to them. And if you are successful in ignoring them, don't think about what their significance is, what they mean, why they are there. Don't struggle with them. Just pay no attention to them. You'll find that the thoughts will start fading away. And if you're truly successful in ignoring them, you'll find that even a few seconds after you have ignored the thought, you will not be able to even remember what thought it was that you have ignored. Just so take the stand that nothing matters. Right now I'm meditating, everything can wait. Nothing is important. And truly, nothing is important. Much of our thoughts are unnecessary. Much of our speech is also unnecessary. And after all, thought and speech are closely related. It is our thoughts which come dressed up as speech. And therefore, the two are very closely related. So essentially, when a person is thinking and getting all these stray thoughts, the person is speaking to himself. And just say to yourself, why am I speaking to myself? Doesn't serve any purpose. So no matter what the thoughts are, speaking to yourself serves no purpose. So why am I doing it? And then you'll start ignoring it, and a few seconds later you will should not even remember what you ignored. So that is ignoring the thoughts. Second is, follows from what I was saying just now, reject it a little actively. Do not talk to yourself. Remind yourself, I'm just talking to myself. Why do I have to do it? So that is sort of an active rejection of the thought. Then note down. Now this is about thoughts of a particular category. Thoughts about things to do. During meditation, you will remember, as soon as I finish meditating, I have to call this person. Now, why does it happen? These things will happen more during meditation, just as when we were talking about pratyahar, that the sounds to which you were not paying attention, now you start paying attention because of the unmasking effect. The same thing happens here. Because your mind is relatively quiet now, all the things which you had forgotten, you will start remembering. You have not called somebody for 3 months, but then now you suddenly feel, oh, I have forgotten that friend, I have not called that person, let me do it as soon as I stop meditating. Now if that type of thought comes about things to do, an assignment to complete, or maybe a housewife thinks of, the curd must be ready. As soon as I finish meditating, I must put it in the fridge, otherwise it will get hypermature. Whatever the thought may be. So this type of a thought has a tendency to become recurrent. Because on one hand you remember it, this is what I have to do after I stop meditating. On the other hand you start feeling, I'm quite sure I'll forget it again by the time I finish meditating. So the thought becomes recurrent. So one simple way is to note it down. And how one can do it is, when you start meditating, keep a pencil and paper by your side. With your eyes closed, try to scribble on that paper something which will serve as a reminder. And you'll find that it will be enough of a reminder. When you open your eyes, it will be still legible enough for you to make out what is it that you had noted down. So in a way, you are building up a short to-do list while meditating. But then the way it helps is, then that thought does not become recurrent. You are assured, I have noted it down, so I will not forget it. So that's how noting down can help. Now, we come to a little more exclusively to the mindfulness type of meditation, because it's extremely popular. What is mindfulness? Does it mean a full mind or something else? What it means is being mindful of what the mind is full of. Being mindful of means being careful about what the mind is full of. So it's not an empty mind, it is a vigilant blank. It is vigilant about what the mind is full of. The mother has given a beautiful sort of a sequence in which this can happen in her commentaries on the Dhammapada. And she says that first just observe the thoughts without trying to do anything about them. The next stage, you can start classifying them into thoughts which are worth retaining and those which may be rejected. And you'll find that most of the thoughts are totally unnecessary. You'll end up rejecting most of them. And when you do that, then you start filtering them in such a way that you uh, start retaining only those which are worth retaining, and the rest you keep ignoring and rejecting. And the final stage would be a mastery over thoughts, so that you'll get only those thoughts which are worth retaining. Now, that gap between just filtering the thoughts and total mastery over thoughts can be a big gap. But all the same, that is the sequence in which one goes as one continues with meditation month after month, year after year. Finally, don't be too sort of critical of yourself if you get thoughts, because it is the very business of the mind to think, just as the business of the heart is to beat. Therefore, you don't have to stop thinking during meditation, just control the quality of what you think. And that is what dhyana is about in Patanjali's scheme, and that is what mindfulness meditation is about. Meditation has some of these conventional techniques, concentration type, meditation, mindfulness type, and so on, but it can take a wide variety. This is in this picture you see a few people taking a meditative walk in a labyrinth. A labyrinth looks like a maze, but it is not a maze. It is just a path that is not straight. It's not truly a maze. Now, it is not, the path is not straight, and therefore, while walking, you can't walk absent-mindedly and just keep thinking. If you have to keep walking on the path, you have to concentrate on the path. So that way, it again provides an opportunity to concentrate while you are walking. And if you, while walking, along with that, you couple it with slow breathing, and then couple that slow breathing with your silent chanting, you'll find that the walk itself will become meditative, and walking on that path will in addition also give you some physical exercise. So coupling exercise, just as you can couple the yogasanas with a meditative practice, you can couple this meditation with physical exercise here, and you'll find that the type of path in which you're walking will become a further aid to concentration, because the path is not straight. So you have to keep curving your steps to stay on the path. So this is a labyrinth. And by the way, Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch also has a labyrinth now for a meditative walk. This is another one. This person is just going round and round. You know, the dervishes, they just whirling dance. They're so absorbed in it that coupled with the thinking of the divine, it becomes a meditative practice. Intense movement, bodily movement. Dancing. Dancing can be a meditative experience. And just a walk in the woods can be a meditative experience. Looking after greenery, watering the plants, that can be a meditative experience, because you can see the divine in the plants while you do so. One can see the divine everywhere. While watering the plants, while taking a walk, just see the divine in whatever is around you, birds, butterflies, plants, and becomes a meditation. So essentially, meditation is a total absorption in an activity that does not require analytic attention or targeted thinking. Or, to put it still more briefly, it is regulated and restrained mental activity. That is the essence of meditation. What is the significance of meditation in integral yoga? Considerable if you enjoy meditating, but certainly less than work. One can progress through meditation, but through work, provided it is done in the right spirit. This is important, provided it is done in the right spirit. Work can be worship, but not all work is worship. But through work, provided it is done in the right spirit, one can progress 10 times more. And what is sort of the essence of work done in the right spirit? Work that is enlightened by knowledge and lubricated by devotion. That is the type of work which is offered to the divine, which becomes worship, and this type of work can be 10 times more effective in making spiritual progress than the technique of meditation. or this type of work itself can become meditation. So when it comes to integral yoga, there is no prescribed technique of meditation. Meditation is acceptable, but it is neither necessary nor sufficient. The mother has also talked about dynamic meditation. Now, what is dynamic meditation? Dynamic meditation changes the person, it changes the individual. In the language of the Gita, it will make the person move from tamas to rajas and from rajas to sattva. Or, in simpler terms, it changes the individual, it purifies the feelings and thoughts of the individual, it makes the individual closer to the divine. So, a positive change, a transformative change in the individual should be the result of meditation that is truly dynamic. This is along the lines, of what Swami Vivekananda once said when he was asked the difference between sleeping and meditation. He says, if a fool goes to sleep, he wakes up a fool. If a fool meditates, he comes out a little wiser. So that is what the change that should come about as a result of proper meditation. Even a fool will emerge a little wiser from meditation. Now, how about a comparison of meditation with prayer? The clear-cut differences are that in meditation we do not ask the divine for anything. In prayer we do ask for something, but that is in fact the literal meaning of a prayer, asking for something. In meditation we listen to God. We clear the ground by silencing the surface activity so that we are vigilant and alert about listening to the divine. In prayer, on the other hand, we speak to God. We speak to the divine. Maybe asking for something or something else. But then these distinctions, while they are clear-cut, they are not as clear-cut as they look. There can be a big overlap. One can ask for something even during meditation, with, of course, the provision that this is what I want, Mother, but you know best what is good for me. So I'll be equally happy even if you don't give me what I'm asking for, because I know you'll give me what I truly need, not what I want. Because what I want may not be the best thing for me. In the same way, in prayer, one doesn't necessarily have to ask for something. The prayer can just consist of adoration of the divine. The prayer can just consist of gratitude to the divine. The prayer can just consist of confessions to the divine. These are the mistakes I made. Please forgive me. Keep me on the right path. Give me the courage and the wisdom to stay on the right path. I can't handle it all on my own. So please be by my side when I'm straying from the path. So it can be the confessions. It can be a total surrender. I am in your hands. Do with me what you like. All this can be a part of prayer without asking for anything. Or one may not ask anything for oneself. One can ask for somebody else who may be ill, who may be going through a difficult period of life. One may ask collectively for the human race as a whole. So that can happen during meditation, that can happen during prayer. So there's no strict division, although one could say that literally prayer means asking for something. In meditation we don't have to ask for anything. Again, listening to God and speaking to God, again there can be an overlap. During meditation also one can have a dialogue with the divine, especially during the stage of dhyana or contemplation. And in prayer also, not only one speaks to God, one may also try to listen to the response. The aspiration calls forth a response. Prayer can be an aspiration, and the aspiration may bring forth a response to which a person may listen during prayer. So strictly speaking, there's no difference, but all the same, these are the essential differences between the two. The system misbehaved a little. I brought it out of its meditation. Sri Aurobindo says his work, bhakti and meditation are the three supports of yoga. So all three are important in integral yoga. One can do with all three or two or one. So nothing is compulsory. There's a lot of flexibility available, as in the Gita. There are people who can't meditate in the set way that one calls meditation, but they progress through work or through bhakti or through the two together. So, very flexible sort of an attitude. Now, coming to the ordinary applications of meditation, uh, all said and done, meditation can improve academic performance because it does improve the ability to concentrate. Just as one can concentrate during meditation, one learns how to meditate on anything else too. So one can concentrate while reading, one knows how to avoid stray thoughts. So that's how it can improve academic performance. It can help solve problems or questions because the process of solving a problem or a question is somewhat similar to meditation. The problem or the question is troubling the person so much that the person sits down in silence and thinks about it. One concentrates on that. That corresponds to the stage of dharana. Then, if the person continues, some solutions to the problem or answers to the question start suggesting themselves. That corresponds to dhyana. So we normally solve our problems and questions sometimes through a process that is comparable to dharana and dhyana. Dharana is the concentrating on the problem or the question, and dhyana is the solutions on the answers that we get. So the process is quite similar. And in fact, come to think of it, the mystics who have sort of evolved these meditative techniques, they also had a questions, existential questions like who am I, what is the purpose of life, what is the relationship between the individual and the creator if there is one. Now these are the type of questions that troubled them. They concentrated on these questions and they got the answers, and they found that while doing so, it helped if there were no distractions and the silence, the surface activity of the mind was silent. So sort of they stumbled upon these techniques while trying to answer these questions, and that's how meditative techniques probably originally evolved. It can also help productivity because that also requires concentration. It can increase creativity because that also requires an uncluttered mind. It can reduce stress. We'll talk about it again, both what it can do and what it cannot do for relief from stress, but it can help in reducing stress and facilitate enlightenment. By itself, probably meditation will not lead to enlightenment, but it can certainly facilitate the process by putting us in touch with the divine. Finally, let not thoughts such as exactly how to meditate, why I cannot meditate, will I ever be able to meditate, give you stress instead of the calm and peace that you are trying to meditate for. Now let's turn to a few questions which will essentially end up revising some of the things that we have talked about. Meditation is impossible while sitting on a chair. It's not essential to sit on a mat. So long as one is stable and comfortable, one can do it also on a chair. So this is a false statement. In integral yoga, there is a unique technique of meditation. No, there's no unique technique. Any type of technique that suits you the best is acceptable. In fact, if you meditate regularly, you'll settle down on your brand, your unique technique of meditation, and that is quite okay. In integral yoga, there is no place for meditation. It certainly has a place. It can find a place. It is not compulsory, but all the same, if a person feels like meditating, if that is one of the favored ways of getting in touch with the divine for that particular person, if it suits that person's temperament, then certainly the person can spend some time on meditation. In fact, an evening meditation was a routine thing in Sri Aurobindo Ashram Pondicherry, and so is the case with Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. So it's not that meditation has no place, it does have a place. Work can become a meditation. Yes, it can become a meditation done in the right spirit, as the mother said, and it can also lead to progress much faster than just the classical meditation. Of course, if work can become a meditation, if that is the right choice, none of the above cannot be the right alternative. So the right option is work can become a meditation. To relieve stress, meditation is neither necessary nor sufficient. Which means that one can relieve stress without meditating, and if a person meditates, that by itself will not be enough, something more will be still needed. Now that is true because while meditation can facilitate relief from stress, it is not absolutely necessary. So neither necessary nor sufficient, which means that if one depends entirely on meditation to relieve stress, it will not be effective, which means it is not sufficient, because unless a person changes the way one looks at events and circumstances of life, without that attitudinal change, meditation alone will not help. So it is neither necessary nor sufficient. Let's see the other options. So this option A seems to be correct, but let's go through the other ones. Meditation is necessary but not sufficient, which means meditation is absolutely necessary. Without it, you can never get rid of stress, but not sufficient, which means meditation certainly is necessary, but in addition, you should do something else. Meditation is not absolutely necessary, neither in integral yoga nor for relief stress. So option B cannot be the right one. To relieve stress, meditation is sufficient but not necessary. Meditation is sufficient, which means meditation alone is enough, but it's not necessary, which means there may be other ways of doing it. There may be other ways of relieving stress, but meditation by itself can also be sufficient. That's also not true, because meditation by alone will not be sufficient, because unless one makes that attitudinal change, one looks at events and circumstances of life differently, it will not be sufficient. Meditation is both necessary and sufficient, which means without meditation one cannot get relief from stress, and it is also sufficient, which means then you need not do anything else. This is also not true, certainly. So the correct option is the very first one. Meditation is neither necessary nor sufficient. Assertion: yoga and meditation is an incorrect expression. Reason: yoga is a part of meditation. Now, yoga and meditation is a very common expression, but it is incorrect. Why it is incorrect is because meditation is a part of yoga. The reason here given is yoga is a part of meditation, which is not true. It is meditation that is a part of yoga, not the other way around. Okay. The way to connect the two is to try and read them like this. Yoga and meditation is an incorrect expression because yoga is a part of meditation. So if the sentence does not read correct, if you add a because there, then there's something wrong there. And here it is the assertion which is right, but the reason is wrong. So the assertion is a true statement, reason is a false statement. It is meditation that is a part of yoga. Suggested readings. This is a small 48-page booklet, The What, Why and How of Meditation in the words of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. It's a compilation and it is not exhaustive. Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have said a lot about meditation, which is not there in this book, but it is a fairly carefully selected compilation and has been published by Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. The What, Why and How of Meditation in the words of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And the cover illustration is by a student of the Mothers International School. In this book, Back to Health Through Yoga, this forms a part of Chapter 2, Demystifying Meditation. And in this book, it is a part of Raja Yoga. And in this book, which I am introducing today, Understanding Spirituality and Living It 24/7, it occurs at 3 places: meditation as a technique, sample guided meditation, and a few passages for meditation. And in this book, which is available for free download on the Yes Spirituality website, yesspirituality.wordpress.com, you have essays on meditation, mindfulness, Preksha, Zen. Preksha is a Jain system, Jain method of meditation. Zen, which is one of the Buddhist meditations, and on each of the limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, and many other related topics. So you'll find one essay on each of these. Thank you. For me, it was easy. I could concentrate because I had no choice. I had to speak. But even if you could not, you can listen to it again in parts, because I know the attention span of a student is said to be about 20 minutes as a teacher. That's what I know. But I couldn't help it because I wanted to make it fairly exhaustive. And you have the choice of seeing it in small bits again and again. That is what the technology has provided. You can have a long session and yet not suffer the handicap of a long lecture.
Good morning, sir.
Good.
Namaste, sir. Uh, Thank you so much for taking a wonderful topic, meditation, which is a lovely and very extensive topic. Sir, I would like to ask you, I'm a yoga teacher trainer, but so many times students say, when we start telling them to just focus on the breath, when you start with your meditation, you're sitting, focus on your breath. But at times, the student cannot even focus on the breath. So, how should we guide them? What will be the easiest way to guide them?
Probably the easiest would be, immediate response that comes to me is to also tell them to chant something silently, because the chanting will help in concentrating on the breath. One of the popular sounds that is chanted in yoga classes is, for example, Om. So tell them that silently chant an Om every time you breathe out. Then they'll be able to maintain their focus on the breath also automatically.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
The question is in the chat box, how is Vedantic meditation different from meditation in Raja Yoga?
Vedanta is the name of a philosophy. Philosophies don't have techniques. So I don't know if there's any term like Vedantic meditation.
Okay, the next question is in Matri Mandir, we have the 12 petals, almost virtual. What would be the best for meditation there? Open eyes or closed?
Again, it depends on the preference. In integral yoga, we don't say that this is right and this is wrong in terms of techniques. If you temperament wise find your meditation more peaceful with the eyes closed, you may keep them closed. If you find it more peaceful with the eyes open, you may keep them open. And the petals to concentrate on, personally, I would feel that the two most important petals to concentrate on are gratitude and sincerity.
Can I make a question?
Sure, please go ahead.
Thank you. Do you hate about the meditation of Tonglen? Is coming from the Tibetan Buddhism, giving and taking and giving, I think. It's breathing in and breathing out with a special kind of visualization of taking the suffering from others and giving them some light or healthy feelings. Did you hear it about this kind of meditation?
Yes, these type of positive thoughts uh, are the thoughts worth retaining, and they can be coupled to breathing. They can be coupled to breathing, just as a mantra or a name can be coupled to breathing. Even this type of thoughts can also be coupled to breathing.
Alright, that brings us to the end of session today. Tomorrow we will have a live guided meditation session. Today we end with the meditative music. Thank you everyone.
That saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead us home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Amazing